The Sixth and I Historic Synagogue's blend of the religious and the artistic has helped shape the character of Judaism in Washington. Jared Soares for The New York Times, Washington. On a wet night in August, in a bare room in the basement of the Sixth and I Synagogue, one of Washington's oldest, the comedian Joe Monday was preparing backstage for his stand-up set. Then the heavy rains started to flood the floor. Mr. Monday and his aunts were hurried upstairs, to the 800-seat sanctuary under an elaborate 69-foot Moorish-style dome, where hundreds of 20 and 30-something guests crammed into pews. Mr. Monday soon unleashed an expletive-laden set from the pulpit, delivering his usual jokes in front of a painted portion of scripture. "Remember ye the law of Moses. It was like an anxiety dream," said Mr. Monday, who is Jewish. "I was imagining that the manager was going to be like, 'You have to do your Torah portion.' I couldn't believe what was happening." The setting might have been unlikely in most houses of worship, but not the Sixth and I Historic Synagogue, now a centerpiece of Jewish life in the capital, where bawdy comedy sets, high-profile acts, podcast recordings, beer tastings and book talks mix with traditional spiritual programming, Simchat Torah celebrations, regular Sabbath observances, Purim theater and 5 varieties of High Holy Day services. While other Jewish organizations have tried a culture-centric model, the 92nd Street Y in New York is perhaps the best-known example. Sixth and I's blend of the religious and the artistic has become a local template, a convergence of intellectual and spiritual currents that has helped shape the character of Judaism in Washington. At a time when young Jews see synagogue affiliations as less of a social obligation, Sixth and I's non-membership, ticketed model has given them a way to be spiritually self-structured, to come and go, to pay by the activity. The synagogue reopened in 2004 after serving as a Methodist church and nearly becoming a nightclub. Jared Soares for The New York Times. Sixth and I's High Holy Days services sell out to over 3,000 people, part of the 80,000 who visit every year, a staggering number for a small space that is just over a decade old. Sabbath services alone draw 10,000 guests each year. Around 680,000 people live in the district. What it is today is really the story of the inordinate amount of change we're seeing in American Jewish life, said M. Bruce Lustig, the rabbi at one of the capital's most storied synagogues, Washington Hebrew congregation. The physical structure, too, has become an important expression of Washington's complicated and shifting demography, changing from its century-old roots as a synagogue to a black church, almost becoming a nightclub, before being restored as a synagogue, the only one in the city's center. Young Jews, Rabbi Lustig said, want to walk to work, to where you buy food, where you pray, where you get intellectually stimulated. The building, just blocks from a subway hub, is a kind of spiritual middle point in the city, easy to access by bike, train, car or foot. We're in the right place at the right time, said Shelton Zuckerman, one of 3 Washington developers who bought the building to save it from what would have been a nightclub. Its seller, the Turner Memorial AME Church, was eager to help avoid that fate. The synagogue's sanctuary seats 800, about 80,000 people visit each year. Jared Soares for The New York Times. We decided what DC needed was a non-denominational synagogue, Mr. Zuckerman said. It wasn't conservative, it wasn't orthodox, it wasn't reform. Daniel G. Zemmel, the rabbi at Temple Micah, which has long been viewed as at the forefront of progressive synagogues, called Sixth and I a new kind of hybrid American Jewish life. He said, is sorely in need of more alternative, open-ended and self-defining and evolving institutions, yet for all of its appeals to modern Jewish life, the Sixth and I Historic Synagogue is a logical consequence of a long and classical tradition in Washington. Several of the earliest Jewish groups here predated or then mimicked the synagogue center model that Rabbi Mordecai Kaplan, considered the founder of Reconstructionist Judaism, is believed to have termed in the 20th century. Among the early examples was the Hebrew Home for the Aged, which by 1932 had 52 residents and a 300-capacity synagogue, and a Young People's Synagogue in Washington, an organizing mechanism for young, unaffiliated Jews, which held High Holy Days services at the Sheraton Silver Spring Motor Inn in Maryland. The most successful early entrant was the Washington Jewish Community Center, which remains a presence less than a mile north of the White House. a Simchat Torah celebration in October that Sixth and I organized. Jared Soares for The New York Times. Mr. Zuckerman and his partners reopened the building in 2004 and rebranded it as the Sixth and I Historic Synagogue. Its early years were susceptible to criticism, especially from local rabbis at synagogues with long membership rolls. I have more than once actually been named in a rabbi's sermon in D.C., pointing out that this is not a way you build community, said Esther Safran IV, the director from 2007 to 2016. They were afraid we were undermining the Jewish community. The timing of Musfor's tenure dovetailed with a sharp influx of young professionals to the capital, and to a downtown at times known for its vacancies. Washington Jews have once again started to flock to the city's center, after half that population had moved to the suburbs by 1956. Last year, the city hit its highest population mark in 4 decades, thanks to new residents in their 20s and 30s. Those ages 20 to 34 made up almost all of the city's population gain from 2000 to 2010. We'll have traditional services on Friday and then in the next room, 250 young Jewish professionals enjoying Shabbat dinner, said Heather Moran, Sixth and I's executive director. As younger Jews have become less attached to religious conventions and institutions, Sixth and I has become more attentive to its participants' social lives, offering meditation and paid family leave classes. About a third of Jews in the area do not identify with a particular branch of Judaism, like Orthodox or Reform, the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington found in a 2015 study. The administrative offices of the synagogue are of memorabilia showcasing past high-profile visitors. Jared Soares for The New York Times. The senior rabbi at Sixth and I, Shira Stutman, estimates that a third of those at her services are not Jewish. She said that her intent was to engage people who are marginally connected to Judaism, who have Jewish pride but whose first thought on a Friday night isn't to go to services. One of those non-Jews, Katharina Obzer, said she started going to interfaith couples workshops and Sabbath services with her husband, who is Jewish, in 2015 and has not stopped, even if the specific liturgy isn't my liturgy. Ms. Obzer, 33, said, "That space for reflection, that space for thoughtfulness is something that I value immensely and have not found in another religious setting." Ms. Obzer said that there was a spirituality there that I can practice that has really resonated with me. One subject Rabbi Stutman emphasizes to all of her congregants is the effect of gentrification in the neighborhoods surrounding Sixth and I, which have become destination addresses amid the city's population boom. Washington is a study in the ways new communities interact with their older ones, she said. The synagogue rents a Chinese church for services, joins with a black church for Martin Luther King's birthday services and hosts a young Muslims group, leaving her congregants more sensitive to the city's fabric. Miniature models of the synagogue, second from left, and other houses of worship. Jared Soares for The New York Times. The synagogue has also been adept with the currency of celebrity. Notable speakers include Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Supreme Court Justice, Senator Elizabeth Warren, the surgeon and journalist Atul Gawande, the chef Yotam Ottolenghi, the transgender activist Caitlyn Jenner, the actresses Tina Fey and Gabori Sidibe, and the Facebook executive Sheryl Sandberg. Friends on boards of other synagogues have told me they've loosened it up because of Sixth and his influence, Mr. Zuckerman said. Local celebrities have helped too. Rabbi Shmuel Herzfeld of Oaf Sholem, the National Synagogue in Washington, has been one of the most reliable advocates for Sixth and I, even adopting some of its freewheeling aesthetic charms, including one he invented a car advertising his synagogue that he deemed the Matzah Mobile. Sixth and I is the vanguard and trendsetter in Washington Jewish life, said Rabbi Herzfeld, whose synagogue's members include several couples that met at Sixth and I. He offered a blessing, then ate one of the first potato chips at one of Sixth and his most eccentric creations, a kosher food truck called Sixth Eye, with corned beef certified by a rabbi in Baltimore. Despite its reach, Sixth and his triumphs have not created friction with the leaders of other Jewish institutions. The Jewish Community Center's director, Carol Zarwitsky, is regular breakfast partners with Ms. Moran. Performers, artists and speakers have signed the walls in a stairwell in the synagogue. Jared Soares for the New York Times. We complement each other and enhance each other, Mozawitzki said. A robust Jewish community is now part of what DC is. And 6th and Ispol is not limited to its neighbors. The kinds of things that have been done at 6th and I are a model for what can be done at a Jewish community center, said Doron Krakoff, the president and chief executive of the Jewish Community Center Association of North America, which is based in New York. Mr. Krakoff says he thinks of 6th and I as precisely what has made Jewish institutions more appealing to an urban dwelling set, letting young Jews live and pray in the same small radius. Jewish community centers have been born or reborn to respond to precisely that dynamic, he said. Washington's traditional synagogues have capitalized, too. A decade ago, Rabbi Lustig was worried about the resources his synagogue had to attract young Jews. Now, he said, we're busting at the seams, with millennial-targeted events oversubscribed, another indication of the attendant riches of a wave of religious 20-somethings moving to the capital. Adas Israel, a synagogue that used to be housed in 6th and is building, now counts many young 6th and I participants among its members. 6th and I is blowing up Jewish ideas into new dimensions, said Lauren Holtzblatt, a rabbi at Adas Israel. She recently ran the synagogue's Mindfulness Center, which includes meditation, yoga and soulful Sabbath services for the more established synagogues. Like hers, Rabbi Holtzblatt said, 6th and I, only notionally a synagogue, can be instructive even for the most conventional places of worship. They form intimate Jewish communities in a place that claims not to have a Jewish community, she said.